Welcome back to the Grunge Bible Podcast. This is episode 120, and the Grunge Bible Podcast is not going anywhere. We will not retreat. We're unstoppable. This negative energy, Ethan, it only makes us stronger.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Yeah, man, we are a positive train rolling forward, and we can't be stopped.
Yeah,
so,
we can't.
How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm great. I'm really excited to do this podcast. Once again, as we spoke about last week, like, you know, when Christmas comes and you're a child and you get a new toy and you're just really excited to play with that new toy. I can't wait to record because we got these microphones.
Hell yeah, dude, man. These things are great. If you listen to our last episode, 119, it was our debut, and we both had them. And it's nice. I talked to my brother, and it's nice that we got them at the same time.
Yeah.
And there's, you didn't have the one audio is better than the other. So I'm glad that we are synced up in that regard.
Exactly. You know, we're a unit around here, and we go into all of our endeavors together at the same time. So.
Into the flood again.
Into the flood again, some would say. So that's how I'm doing. Ethan, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. So last episode, we talked about how I was getting ready for the championships, and we are recording this on Tuesday, July 3rd. So I'm still preparing. I'm still getting ready. So the results will come on next week's podcast. So I'm in the same state I was a couple days ago when we recorded that episode. I'm feeling good. I'm trying to be rested, and all is calm here. It's quiet, so I'm doing good. How about you, ma'am?
That's awesome. You already asked me how I'm doing, but I'll say it again. I'm doing great. We've reached for the longtime listeners. We've reached the precarious point in the calendar here where I live in my nice little attic apartment, and it gets a little steamy. So at the kickoff of this podcast, July 3rd, we're recording. It's 87 degrees in my apartment, but we won't retreat, just like I said. So, the pods need to be casted, even though I'd rather be broadcasting.
Absolutely.
Gone fishing.
That's incredible, dude.
Absolutely.
That's incredible. So on this episode, we are going to be diving into the movie Singles.
Oh yeah.
Which, funny enough, we were shooting around ideas for the podcast, and we had a few, and we're like, we haven't done a proper episode on the Singles movie. And spoiler alert, Chris and I, neither of us have ever seen the movie. Now, this may come to a surprise. Until now, this may come to a surprise, but it's one of those things that we just had never done, and then we kind of got backed into a wall where everybody just assumed we saw it. So,
yeah.
There's been posts made about it. There's been talk and banter, and but we were pulling one over on everybody. We'd never watched it. So today, last night, we actually synced up and we started the movie. It's on YouTube with ads for free. And we synced up and we watched it simultaneously together. And we texted back and forth and we laughed and we made fun of it. And we enjoyed everything about this Cameron Crowe production and the people in it. So we're going to give an honest review about what we thought, what our initial thoughts, 24 hours after, exactly what we, how we processed it.
Yeah,
and
it's
pretty
in.
funny. We got, I think we have some good insights coming. So we're pretty excited about that. I enjoy the fact that we were able to watch it together for the first time simultaneously. I thought that was pretty cool.
It was really great. And I have to say, out of all of the topics that have ever been requested, we've had a lot of people request that we do an episode on the Singles movie, and it was always in the vein of, it's such a classic, like, I know you guys know about it, like you got to do an episode about it, but we never had the heart to tell anybody that we had never seen it before. We were talking before we sat down to watch it yesterday, and I was like, I've posted about this movie a lot. I've posted, a compliment for us is a compliment for you dozens of times. The Citizen Dick posters, touch me, I'm Dick. I had no idea.
Desperation is the worst cologne, right?
Exactly. I had no idea. But we're rolling away the stone, and we did our homework and we watched it. And boy, do we have some thoughts about this film.
It's so funny because, movies, when people ask you if you've seen a movie, And you've seen that movie, right? And even if you haven't, just like,
Yeah, I do that all the time.
One of the easiest small white lies that people will, and then they ask you about a scene or say something, and then you got to be like, oh yeah, and then you like kind of chuckle and hopefully you just move on with the conversation. So I think that a lot of people can relate to that, where sometimes you just gotta go with it until
it's so tough too, because most of the time when people ask you, oh, have you seen this, or oh, have you heard of this artist, the social contract says that you just say yes, because they're not, they don't actually
care.
Ruin
the conversation.
They don't actually care. They just want to continue talking about what they want to talk about. But then sometimes you do get put on the spot. Like 1 out of every 55 times this happens, they'll ask you a question about it. Like, oh, do you remember when that thing happened? Like, and then what happened next? I was like, you know what? It's been a while since I've seen it. Like,
I was in and out. I was doing something else. Like, I must have missed that scene.
Yeah, but the amount of, it's like Petey says, have you ever told a lie just for the hell of it? Nothing that important. And I told lies about this one a lot. There were only members of the inner circle knew that I had never seen the Singles movie. I couldn't say that on Grunge Bible. This is like the one movie that we have to see, and we saw it. We saw it.
It was like in the beginning too, and it's like, have you listened to this band? And then you have to be like, oh yeah, I haven't really got into them too much, but like
they're on my list. Like when I get home from work tonight, I'm gonna take a listen. Oh, the two most common Grunge Bible lies from the two of us. I'm gonna listen to that later today, and then I know the Singles movie.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, we would like to take this time to thank our Patreon supporters. Without you, we wouldn't have these mics. We wouldn't have the motivation to do this. And overall, we just need support in life. And this is the best way to do it. So if you're out there listening and it's your first time, just please enjoy the show, enjoy the podcast. Hope we impress you. But if you've been listening for a long time, maybe say, 10, 20, 30 episodes, if you've been a lifer, then it's really time that you sack up. And we have 3 different tiers, the $2, the $5, and the $10 tier. And all proceeds go right back into this show. We haven't pocketed pretty much anything.
I haven't made a penny off of this show, Ethan.
Which is unbelievable. But I think that's good. I think that our time is coming, and one day we will make some money off of this. But right now, it's just to keep this show running, so we can give you guys some excitement and some entertainment weekly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, I think this is a really good time to say what I'm about to say. A lot of what we say when it relates to something like this, it's very tongue-in-cheek. We're very satirical, sarcastic about it, but I have to say, if I could speak for you, Ethan, and speak for Drew as well,
please.
The 3 of us, we've been working really hard lately to try to take this thing to the next level and to really add a different element to it. No, we really have. Like
I know. I was saying we're trying.
We're trying. We're trying. Like, there's a lot of effort that we're putting in on the front end that we're gonna hope pays off in terms of different voices that we're able to get onto the show, different opportunities that we're going to be able to have, and different conversations that we're going to be able to share with people. And this is the time now more than ever. If you've ever been on the fence about supporting us, about getting some skin in the game, as we like to talk about, this is when it matters. We made the upgrade. We've got your money into it now, so we're not going anywhere. We can't Irish goodbye the podcast this fall like we thought we could at some time. These mics, we have to do at least 120 more episodes. So we've got a lot of stuff going on, and we've really tried to up the ante lately behind the scenes in terms of just different things that we're trying to do and different people that we're trying to get organized and get our ducks in a row to have them on this space and share those conversations with you. So anything that you do to support that and to make that possible, you're going to directly benefit from. So thank you in advance for your support, and also thank you to everyone that has already supported, most notably our $10 supporters on Patreon. So these individuals, every single month, they give us $10, and that goes directly into the upkeep of the podcast, the software that we need, the producer, Drew, who needs to be paid because he's doing really good work. Everything that we do to make this thing possible, it's because of them. So I would like to thank our top tier supporters right now, and their names currently are Black Hole Sean, The Blue Owl, Brother Nature, Doug Endy, Corden Stewart, Kara K, Captain Hightop, Fresh Tendonitis, Faith Bittner, Eric R. Berry, Epona, Eddie Vedder got me through my second divorce, Fuck Soup, Granny Grunge, Jade Mercado, Jamie Lynn, Carlene Salona, Keith White, Laura Nyreen, Chris LSMS, Millie, Nikki Six, What the Fuck's Up Denny's, Seattle 4 fanboy from New Jersey, Sherry Matthews, and Rachel Corning. I raise my glass to thee. Thank you for your steadfast support, and here's to the next chapter of cool things that we're going to be able to do because of your support.
Amen to that. So please consider, and
that's my soapbox for the day. I'm off the soapbox. I'm done being serious. Well, I can't be done being serious because we're going to talk about the Singles movie, which is a very serious topic.
So, Chris, how much did you know about this movie before going into this? When you sat down to watch it, what did you expect?
So my headspace, I'll relate how much I knew about the movie based off of this interaction that we had after the movie. So we finished the movie last night, and I called you, Ethan, and only then did I put together why it was called Singles. The fact that they were we're all young single people. I think all of the years of people telling me that it's the grunge Seattle movie, I figured that it would have been a lot more about music. You know, I thought it was going to be following Citizen Dick and the mighty Cliff Pontier, but we didn't really get any of that. We didn't know what happened. I thought
storylines were. Frail.
So, exactly.
They were weak.
I thought that it was the trials and tribulations of a band from Seattle, of the Seattle sound, who's going to make it, and just everything that's going on in the protagonist, Cliff Pontier's life. I didn't know that there were other characters in there. I didn't know that Steve was in there. I didn't know that, I didn't know that all these people were going to rear their heads. So I was taken for a loop. I mean, I got 30 minutes into the movie. I'm like, where the fuck's Citizen Dick? Where they're playing shows? What's going on? So that was what I thought I knew about the movie, and it turned out to be not at all what the movie was about. So once I had to leave that on the side of the road to continue on and take in what was going on. So what about you? What was your knowledge base? It seemed like you had a better head on your shoulders about it than I did, which isn't saying much, obviously.
I knew less about. No, I probably knew less about it overall. I watched the first two scenes before we texted, and I restarted it to sync up with you.
Right.
And when I watched the first two, I was like, oh, Singles. I thought that it was talking about singles as far as artists that had the whole soundtrack, and I thought it was based around the soundtrack, but it really was just the soundtrack was very important to the song, which I think we'll get into. It was all the songs were picked very, important or precisely, I guess. Absolutely. And they had a reason for it, but it wasn't about, I was so surprised that Alice in Chains just had a cameo in the back, and Chris Cornell literally walked up and did on the scene, said nothing. I don't think he even said anything.
He just nodded his head.
And just sang a little bit. I thought that those guys, everybody would kind of be more in the shot, in the scene for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So I also thought that it was going to be way more music based. And, but once we started watching and I realized, I was like, oh, this isn't going to be it. I was kind of ready for, I thought it was going to be like Clerks, where it's just a kind of put together scenes, and they pretty much were just kind of put together scenes, pretty subpar acting overall, and jokes that are corny. And I think that it was meant to be corny in a way. It's definitely a cult classic when you watch these type of movies back. It's supposed to take you back to Seattle and really depict the time and place of, what it was being a single person in Seattle and going to shows and meeting people, and then the day to day, I guess, or how everybody, and you had the Cliff Pontiers of your life that were trying to make it big.
There's a lot of them.
You have a lot of neighbors like that. And so once I guess I had an understanding of that, kind of settled in and didn't expect all that much. And I was pretty entertained for about 60 minutes. And the last 30 minutes I was losing steam. I was like, all right.
Yeah.
I don't think these things are going anywhere. And I was right. They kind of ended. Yeah, they ended.
Yeah. So I think there were a few problems that I had with the movie that maybe decreased my enjoyment of it a little bit. Number one, this was on me. I went in with the complete wrong expectations. I thought it was going to be like Pontier Bible,
That's a big, yeah, which I was excited for.
Right, I was really fired up about that, and then I find out that like no, it's not about that, and it's kind of more of like an ensemble cast as opposed to like you have your one lead person. You had a few different stories that were all happening simultaneously, and I think the movie wasn't long enough and the performances weren't strong enough from the actors. The stakes between the members of this ensemble, the stakes weren't raised enough to the point that I cared what happened with any of them. Yeah, and then like you said, like an hour and 10 minutes in, like, oh shit, like like we're back and that's it. Like, these people are together, these people aren't, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's life, baby.
That's life. I mean, they're right though. Like it doesn't have to be cinematic, I guess.
Yeah, I guess they're right. That is the reality of it. Relationships are not like. I
mean, there's a lot of Steve Dunns out there. There's a lot of singles out there. We know some Steve Dunns in our life. Yeah. We know some Janet Livermores.
I thought you were gonna say that's funny. I thought you were gonna say, one, I thought it was gonna be way more about Cliff Pontier, and two, Matt Dillon is also not a good actor.
Okay, because let's talk about the acting. I think we have
let's give awards out, and okay. I think that
who do you think tied the room together?
Tied the room together, probably. Let's see, probably Jeanette.
Yeah.
I think I think she was probably my favorite. Mm-hmm. Actor or my favorite character throughout the. I mean, Cliff. He was my favorite character. He just
he has to be. It's Cliff Pontier.
But I think Jeanette, I think she did the best job for her role, and she kept the energy pretty high. Like she was pretty fun. Yeah. But I think the worst performance has to go to Matt Dillon. He had the look. He had the I don't know, the looks where people, you want him to be like a really good singer and stuff, and he kind of delivered like a half. It just didn't do it for me when he should have been like emotional, or he should have been like, I guess that was his thing. Like he was kind of like
he was the Zen man, Yeah, and nothing can keep him down, and nothing can affect him. Although you could tell that
I wanted more Zen then. I wanted him to be more like,
that's
way
the
more
thing.
In control, I guess.
Well, that's what happened.
Airhead.
Yeah, like, so he wanted to be that, but he didn't have the guts to be that way. I mean, right at the beginning with Janet, he's like, I see other people, and next thing you know, he gets back with her at the end, and then the band is not successful, and you see him at the end of this is not a impassioned man. I mean, everything has been taken from him. Citizen Dick broke up. I mean, Stone got scared, and the other guys found jobs at Boeing, and that was that. That's how it happens sometimes. So yeah, I have to say, another element of this movie that I was taken off guard by, in addition to the fact that it wasn't, the Chronicles of Pontier, it's always interesting to go back and look at movies that come from notable actors and actresses' early portions of their career. We're watching these, and Linda, the character Linda, is played by Kyra Sedgwick. But I was texting you, and I was like, I always see her as like the mom in every movie from when I was a kid growing up in the 2000s. Like she played like a lot of these like maternal characters. So it's weird to see her as like a young single person. And then I'm a huge fan of The Wire, and then we have Jim True Frost in there as David. And I know him as Roland Presbalewski from The Wire. I'm like, holy shit. Like he's Roman Seattle. He's got a little soul patch going on, in the parlance of our time. And it's always just really, really interesting. But I have to,
I was just say that it's like Jack Nicholson, probably for both of us, where like I've always pictured him as like on the sidelines of a Lakers game, old. Right. And when I just remember when we were young, we played when I was like 12 or something, we played basically charades, or one of those games where you have to guess where you can't speak.
Yeah.
Or you can only say a few words, and I was like a kid, and I got Jack Nicholson, and I knew nothing about him. All I knew is like he's a celebrity. In a chair. I said sits courtside at a Lakers game, and then like all I had to say was "Here's Johnny." You know what I mean? Everybody in the room would have got it, but I had no idea. So when you watch the old stuff, you just like, it's kind of weird because you haven't really taken in a lot of his stuff. I just know him as the older version, but
right.
probably dates me. Some people out there be like, he's the best actor because he is regarded as that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The actors, like the few that, you're like, oh my gosh, like, she's married to Kevin Bacon in real life, or
Danny Elfman.
Danny Elfman, yes, that's
well.
Really
there's
good.
a lot of years between now and when this movie was created and came out in 1992, and both in terms of the lives of the on air, the actors and the actresses, but also in terms of the music, and I think the music really elevates this movie, and I think. Whether you, if you had to make a decision, a binary choice of whether it's a good movie or not, I don't think it's a good movie. But the soundtrack.
What would you rate it?
Are we Rotten Tomatoesing it like a percentage, like 1 to 100, or what's the system?
Give it a percentage, and you weigh in everything, like
weighing in everything,
significance, significance to you, like getting past certain, how. It doesn't need to be like plot line. It's just I'll
give it like a 61 out of 100.
Yeah, I'm giving it like a 69.
Okay, nice. That's perfect.
A little bit higher, a little bit higher. But I think that like you said, the soundtrack, the fact, what I love, the fact that a lot of these songs were written just for this movie, I think is really sick, really cool. Which I guess happens a lot, but the fact that it came from the bands that we love, and they also were really good songs that people love listening to. It's really cool.
Well, and there's so many gems that came from this era, and that's why I think people in our circles, that are fans of grunge rock, this movie is really elevated because of the music. I think, if you take this music out and you had, contemporary soundtracks from the time, maybe not from Seattle, maybe not from grunge, if this was set anywhere else, it's just another movie that people forgot about. But like you said, the soundtrack was incredible, but a lot of the songs that were made as a result of this movie, at the end, you have Cliff, the Ponce tapes and how that came about, that was just an empty cassette box with random names, and Chris Cornell saw the names on the tape and was inspired by the titles of these non-existent songs, that he went home and he demoed these songs, and that's how we got Seasons, and that's where Spoon Man was born out of, and they liked Seasons so much from Chris, just going home for a couple of hours messing around with his home recording, that they put it in the movie prominently, and you have this song, and then obviously really big, a couple of years later, Spoon Man is remade into this absolutely driving powerhouse on Super Unknown, but it's so cool to go back and listen. Like, Chris was in his apartment bedroom writing this just because he thought he was affected and he related to the names. That's another gift that this movie's given us. But something that I want to talk about that we were texting about while we were watching the movie, it was mentally, it was really, really not jarring. I'm struggling to find the proper word, but it was interesting that, like, Lane Staley, Jerry Cantrell, Alice in Chains, they're on stage and they're just the background portion of this movie where, the protagonists are in the crowd and that's where the action is. It's just because it's in Seattle that you have a Seattle band on stage. It was really interesting for me to watch something where Chains were just a background piece, because every single time I've ever watched an Alice in Chains live performance, they have been the focal point for me, and that's where all of my attention is. So, like, that happened to me last night. I'm like, holy shit, like, It Ain't Like That's coming on, like, and they're fucking rocking. Like, I mean, this is Alice in Chains at their best, before Lane really started to go downhill. And I'm like to hell with what the people in the crowd are saying. Like, I don't give a shit what Steve has to say right now. Like, Lane and like Jerry's head banging on stage, like, that's what I want to pay attention to. Enter Jerry, exactly. Like, who cares? Who cares about what Linda's doing? Like, I don't care. It's about Jerry,
Yeah, and the next thing I was going to say is, if we were to give out awards, like the best scene award, and I think that we both would say that when they're playing in the background, also when Soundgarden's playing Birth Ritual towards the end, which is great because Steve goes into the cell room and leaves that long voice message, which I think that scene is better than the first one of them trying to like talk to each other in the bar, but Alice in Chains in the background was really, really cool because it was a longer scene and you got to see more of them playing in the background. And that was all they had in the movie. They just were in the back. Yeah. And I texted you, and we pretty much said the same thing to each other, where like, I thought it was crazy that like, that's how it was back in the day when these bands were getting going. And you've been to clubs where the music is really the background. It's not really a show. It's like a club. You go there to meet people, and there's music playing in the back. And at one point, that was Alice in Chains. They were just playing at in
Got
Seattle.
music 6 nights a week.
Yeah, exactly. And people probably met at Alice concerts, and they probably don't remember the set list and the performance because they were
weren't
meeting
there
other
for
people.
it. Yeah, they weren't
and
there
that,
for
that
it.
kind of blew my mind, and it is really cool to think about.
Yeah, and my perception of the movie, like at its best, it's kind of like a glossed over caricature of like the Pacific Northwest in the early 90s, but like that's an element of it that is still fascinating to this day for me, because by the time and place in which I was born, I would never be able to access something like that. But that just goes to show you, I mean, back then these guys were playing all the time, and in the same way that like the talent and the Matt Dillon's character, that Cliff is just like you see Chris, and Chris lives in your building, and like you're going to see Chains, and you're in a band with Stone and Jeff, and but that fraternal element really did exist, and all of these people knew one another. They were playing in the same circles, they were running in the same circles, and I'm sure there were a lot of people young people, singles, in their 20s at
Neighbors.
that time, who would go around, to the off ramp, to the Crocodile, and see these bands, and that was really cool. That was kind of like a nice little, snapshot, of a realistic element of what existed at the time, regardless of how true or untrue, a lot of the themes in this film were as it related to what was going on then.
Yep, and I was going to text you and say, I know it would make this movie a lot better for you, and if it was based in Boston and everybody had Boston accents and it was about that.
What the
that
fuck
area.
are you talking about?
Yeah, and like because I've actually been enamored by movies that depict a scene of a location, and the Big Lebowski is a great one. Like
Los Angeles.
I watched it and it's like it really is supposed to be Los Angeles, the whole scene, the pornography, the drifter, like it's supposed to depict all of that. And when you kind of look at that lens,
everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of allure to all of that, and that's kind of what this movie is. And if you're from that area too, you're going to be like, oh, I remember that. Like I remember, you see things, and I think that elevates a movie a ton when they pay attention to time and place, and they put that. And that was that's this movie's strong point is like you said, maybe it's glossed over, but it's still like it's very particular and set to a time and place. And I think that's really important in movies. That's an important aspect for a good movie is really embracing all of the cultural stuff.
Yeah, and the coolest thing about any sort of art, I think particularly film, is regardless of how to the letter or not to the letter or implied a lot of these themes may be, the fact that somebody is able to see it as a representation of a time and place. So in this instance, Seattle, the Pacific Northwest in the early 90s, they're perceiving that, and they take that in, and they're affected by it, and it's their view. That makes it real in a way. That's the perception that they have, and that perception is a real perception, regardless of how accurate or implied or abstract the actual film is as it relates to what the subject matter is. I mean, that's just the artistic license that you have when you're writing a film, or when you're writing music, or when you're making a piece of art. But the people's perception and how they process it, that makes it real. So I think in a lot of ways, the same way that the grunge scene and the flannels and everything, I mean, that's real for a lot of people, because that's what they perceive the time to be. And I think that's a pretty, there's value in that. Absolutely.
Of course. Another award, best soundtrack song. And it doesn't need to be coming off the album. What song stuck out to you the most when it played, or it came on, you're excited to hear it, or fit the scene really well?
So I was, this relates at the beginning of the podcast, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I'm sweating profusely because it's 90 degrees in my apartment right now. So I got home last night.
Naturally.
I got home last night. I turned the movie on, and I was sitting right in the doorway of my living room and my bedroom, because I have an air conditioning unit in my bedroom window, so I wanted to get in the path of it. So I'm sitting like right in front of the TV, the same way that your parents would yell at you, like, you're gonna go blind or whatever, you're standing too close to the TV. So I'm standing there right in front of the TV, I'm sitting, and The
Standing, I'm
moment
sitting.
I was sitting, that's turns out I'm a liar.
I'm standing there.
I lied
I'm
about
sitting there. I'm laying
But
down.
one thing that I was doing that I would never lie about, as soon as It Ain't Like That came on, I was headbanging a little bit. It got like it got real for me. You heard little nuggets. Breath and a Scream, State of Love and Trust from Pearl Jam. I mean, that was really cool to hear in one of their first habitats. That was some of the first places that these songs had legs. But when Alice came on and you hear It Ain't Like That, same way when Birth Ritual was on those live performances, it was fucking awesome. It was really cool.
Yeah, it was. And then Wood came on, and you actually got to hear
right after
Into the
It Ain't
Flood
Like That.
again.
Yeah,
I
think that was while
the
Ponce
chorus.
was giving an interview, right, about I'm Dick, you can touch me.
Yeah. I love Dyslexic Heart by Paul Westerberg.
Yep.
And they opened the movie with it, and like it was very clear that like there's singles and there were
It's a
people
sign
trying
of things to come.
and they couldn't really get on the same page, and that's how a Dyslexic Heart can be. And then they closed the movie with it, so I thought that was pretty
Nice
pretty
bookends.
smart. Yeah, nice bookends. I like when people wrap it up that way. So that was solid. I really like that. But yeah, hearing the live performances were easily the best parts of the movie. I mean, and also when they were when they were sitting in the diner, and Cliff was like, read me a good review, but no negative energy, basically. And Eddie and them are sitting there, and like it was really cool seeing those guys playing the part and being in the movie. So anytime that one of our favorite guys were in the scene was great. Even when Chris came up and literally watched Cliff blow the
speakers out,
blow the speakers out and blow the windows, and he didn't say shit, but it was still like, hell yeah, that's Chris Cornell. You know what I mean? Like there he is, just chilling.
Yeah,
so good.
The cool qualities of this movie and the cool factor, I think, only increases with time, because here we are, 31 years after this movie came out, and it's like, wow, there's Eddie Vedder has a small acting role, and Stone and Jeff are right there, and the next thing you know, Chris is coming out. It's really cool. It's just another piece of art and piece of film that is it just shows like another aspect of the area and of the scene, and I think it's really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, so let's see what else about this movie can we get into, Chris?
Oh man, some of the jokes would certainly not play in this day and age, and some of the one of the one of the song choices, I know we were texting about it when they had the pregnancy scene, Nearly Lost You was playing.
Yes. Oh, I loved it. That was so good.
It's so funny too, because I forget the specifics of it, but it's in Lanigan's memoir, Sing Backwards and Weep. But evidently, the movie was being made, and Lanigan felt like the trees were getting snubbed and like they weren't going to be on the soundtrack. And then somebody from whoever was getting the music together for the movie was like, hey, like come to this hotel and give me your CD of Nearly Lost You. And Lanigan was like, fuck, I'm not going to be a fucking courier for this guy. Like, fuck that. But they ended up doing it. But like Lanigan hated the movie. He hated everything that it represented. But I mean, Lanigan hated a lot of things. But I mean, in a weird way, I do think this movie was a vehicle for a lot of people discovering the music, and also discovering what the movie made the Pacific Northwest out to be, with the Ponciers of the world and the weird hats and the soul patches and the long hair and the Doc Martens.
The movie did come out in 92, so these bands are really getting running. So yeah, there's a lot of people where this is probably the introduction to these bands and the songs and the soundtrack, and people probably listen with more intent.
Notably, Alice in Chains is on there. The Smashing Pumpkins have Drown on there. Pearl Jam's on there. Soundgarden's obviously on there. You could make the contention that for most of those bands, they had yet to reach their high water mark in terms of fame.
Oh yeah.
By the time this movie came out, I mean, Soundgarden had still yet to reach, I think, the pinnacle, which I think for them came with Super Unknown. And you could say the same with Pearl Jam. By the time 10 really took off and Versus came out, when they were at the top of the world. So it's interesting, this was kind of before that high water mark was reached, and it's kind of it's a weird little time capsule almost for a lot of what was going on at the time.
And we can't gloss over the pregnancy scene though. So
This is what I'm talking about, like the stakes being raised and the plot being lost. Like,
so she gets pregnant, and like not two scenes later, they get into a car accident, and like you lost your baby, and she grieves for like a minute,
just like that.
She grieves for a minute, and she's like, I need to go to Alaska, and they just like, all right, see you later, and they break up. They break up or whatever, and she comes back, and like, you know, I guess a month is enough time, but like, they just like the baby just died, and that was it. They're like, they moved on with everything. You know, I was like,
and Big Steve gives a nice firm handshake as he did in the beginning, and that's it. You know,
so many handshakes, Chris.
So many handshakes, and it's
the
really
sexual
funny.
tension in the beginning to be finished off with a handshake.
I'm telling you,
just incredible.
Nothing will diffuse sexual tension like a firm handshake.
Yeah, you want to kill the mood, and you have an opportunity. Put out your hand and ask for a handshake. Put out your hand and
ask for a handshake. And it's funny, Ethan, because as I'm sure a lot of people listening, we've seen this happen in real time. We've
oh yeah,
we've got some friends who are handshakers, and next thing you know, I mean, anything that was any pot that was boiling over a little bit, you shake their hand, that's it. It's all over.
Yep. She wasn't like Jeanette and the doctor. It's like, you want to be fun? And she gives him a kiss. Like, you know, that's fun, not a handshake.
Exactly. You know, yeah, Janet Livermore was really laying the law down. But, oh, my God. And then the Xavier McDaniel cameo a few times was pretty quality. Like the what you thinking about. It goes to the interview. Like Xavier McDaniel. Yeah, this was you know, the movie as a whole is greater than the sum of its parts, I would say, as a concept and just as a cultural time capsule.
It's a cult
I think
movie,
it's totally a cult movie, and most cult movies, I think people relate to them not because they're these magnificent works of art, but because they're kind of niche and they mean something very specific to a very specific section of people. And this is absolutely one of those movies, because I know from experience, every single time I would post something about this movie, I'd post the Citizen Dick concert poster for their March 10th show, and people would go nuts, and people would always immediately share their favorite quotes from the movie, and there'd be like 100, 200, 300 comments like very quickly, because people really relate to this movie, or people really value this movie. Ethan, speaking of quotes, are there any quotes from this movie that you really, really love?
I was thinking about that same question of like which ones stood out, and I would say, I mean, there's a lot of good like one-liners, I guess.
Yeah.
But my favorite monologue or favorite, scene, I guess, is when Steve, I guess his name is leaving that voicemail, and he kind of spills his heart out, and then the tape gets eaten, and she actually doesn't hear any of it.
Yeah.
And he kind of like lays it all on the line, and then there's a malfunction with the cassette or the recording where it doesn't get heard. But yeah, I mean, as far as favorite lines, I mean, I think the negative energy one is really good, by Cliff.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know. What about you?
So my favorite one was from later on in the movie, and it's a scene with Cliff and Janet, and it was the whole one where he's like, I used to live out by the airport underneath the flight patterns. It was really noisy with the planes going by all day. I used to have cookouts, and no one would come because of the noise. I got used to it, and then when I moved, I missed the noise. I missed those planes. Janet says, Cliff, what are you talking about? And Cliff rebuts, I don't know. But you know what? He might not know, but he did so know. Good. There's something in there. You missed the noise, but nobody came because it was too loud. But then next thing you know, it's quiet. You miss it.
That's perfect. That's such a good grunge Bible.
Oh yeah,
pulling everything out of a quote. That's so good.
Yeah,
especially when you read it so bluntly like that.
That's absolutely one. It was funny. I was watching the movie, and he starts going about this tangent. He's like, I missed the noise, man. And I was like, wow, like we're actually going to get to a profound moment in this film. And then she's like, what are you talking about? And I was really hoping like he had enough line to go and take another step and make it profound. And he's like, I don't know. That was it.
Yeah.
It's all she wrote sometimes.
It's like in the beginning of the movie, I thought it was really funny, and I don't know exactly what he said, but the guy from Spain, he's like, what do you, like, what's the matter? And she had a flat, right?
Yeah.
Was it a flat?
I believe
She's
so.
like, I have a flat. And he's like, nice, and then like walked away, and that was like all he's. It was just like end of conversation. It was
That
like
was it.
very point blank. He's like, all right, and he like left.
Hey, sometimes you just need to be blunt like that, I guess. But so what is so I have two more questions for you about this film, but the first one would be is there a lesson in this film? do you take away any sort of lesson from the Singles film?
A lot of people are single, basically. A lot of people are single out there. I mean, there is a good line or quote. Was it "Stay single, have fun" or something like that?
Yeah, at the beginning, that was one of the title card cutscenes.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, there's a lot of single people out there. There's a lot of people that are in the same situation, trying to navigate through life and making it difficult. And I think in the movie, I don't know if it's Cliff or something, but basically, like, you got to talk to people. You got to go out, put yourself out there, and just interact with your neighbors and the people around you, and because it's a community, and those are the people that you live around. And they're like, she asked Steve, who are your neighbors, and he names like 5 people. Like, well, that's Cliff, that's Jeanette, and he knows all of his neighbors, and I thought that was kind of cool and a good piece of the time, because people don't know their neighbors nowadays. Mm-hmm. Sorry,
you're good. we're having a live coughing attack on the Grunge Bible podcast.
But people don't know their neighbors anymore, and they are, it's just easier not to engage, mainly because if you're living in an apartment or you're not going to be living there long, you don't want to take the time. And I think it's an important lesson to take the time and to invest in people like that, even if they are strangers. Yeah. Because you never know what can come out of it, and who you may meet, and taking a chance like that is usually the most rewarding in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that.
How about you, Chris? Do you have a lesson
I
from the
do
movie?
actually have one. It's really interesting. I think a lot of the characters throughout the film, there was just this general sense of a lot of them being a little impatient and wanting to rush to the next chapter, the next step. They wanted to be in relationships. They wanted to be married. They wanted to be this huge rock band. But it's funny because, in a way, I think the movie just kind of shows you like, well, what is the rush? Like, you're always going to have problems no matter which next step you have. And, every single chapter begets new problems. But there was a quote the Janet character said that I really related to, and they were talking about, I think it was Linda who had said something about the fact that, she really thought, in college I'd finally find somebody, but then next thing you know, I don't. But then Janet said at one point, somewhere around 25, bizarre becomes immature. And I really, really related to that in a big way. And just as myself and my collective friend group, we grow older, and you're all kind of searching for like who you want to be as adults, and what you want to be involved with, what you want to be about, relationships. My friends are getting engaged, but in the times that you do, bizarre things become fewer and fewer because life's moving fast. And you do reach a point where bizarre does become immature, and you kind of have to stop doing stuff like that. But the whole movie was just kind of like a reminder, like, what's the rush to the next thing? Like, there's something to be said for just kind of being where you are and going through these learning experiences, because that's the only way through. You have to learn it, and you have to learn it yourself. And, you make mistakes. You go back to maybe people that you shouldn't go back to. You spend too much time in a band you shouldn't be in. You don't move out of an apartment that you should move out of, or, you're in a bad job, or you're not inspired, or you are inspired, but you don't know what to do about it. So, yeah, I think despite the fact, the movie doesn't stack up for me, it's not an all-timer for me. But, I mean, there's a message in there. It's always a message.
Absolutely. And I don't know when the next time is that we're going to watch this movie, but I'm sure there will be a time and place where it gets put on, and it's perfect background stuff. I mean, it would be something really funny to put on like at the afters where it's really late and you just put it on where it's literally the background. And then you have, the background is Jerry Cantrell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Big Jerry.
which would be pretty sweet. What was your last
100%.
question that you
I
have?
have one more question. This is perhaps the most important question of them all, and I'm sure this is the one that people have wanted to know most of all. And the question
It's
is
about Tex.
no, unfortunately. The question is, if you, Ethan Shalloway, were given the opportunity where you could pick, you can see Cliff Pontier live or you can see Citizen Dick live, and you can only see one of them,
Right.
what ticket are you going for?
I'm going to be at that March 10th show of Citizen
Citizen
Dick,
Dick, no shit.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be there. I want to see the whole band together. I mean, you heard it in the rousing review, which actually, Chris, we need to look up the review and read that the people gave to him.
Oh,
But you know,
absolutely.
the band was kicking. The band was really good, and you know, Cliff, you know, it's just, the band is the sum of your parts. So if he's not on, you know, at least I can still get the rest of the band to hold me over. But I obviously I would still, if Cliff was on his own, I'd also support him. But if I had the choice, I'm taking Citizen Dick at the March 10th show.
That's pretty good. So the review.
Did you find? Do you have
part
the review? Okay,
of the
perfectly.
review that they didn't read.
Now remember, Chris, I don't want to hear anything negative. Okay, but go ahead.
Well, unfortunately, there's going to be a little bit of negativity here. And
know.
it reads, once again, when the shirtless Cliff Pontier begins singing, you know what you're in for. More pompous, dick-swinging swill from a man who has haunted the local scene for much too long. You wish that Cliff would move to another town like Minneapolis or Los Angeles or New York, a town where he could disappear into the masses and not stand out like the relentlessly mediocre talent that he is. That's tough.
I love that. Hung around the local scene too long.
A little too long. But that's the thing. There's a lot of people
That's
who
when
do
Bizarre
that.
becomes immature.
Exactly. And he became immature, I guess, which is why the band had to move on. And that's why, if I had the choice, I'm taking that Cliff Pontier ticket. I want to see, because the band broke up.
See if he grew up. Yeah.
Stone got scared and the other guys went to Boeing. That affects an artist. And Cliff
I
is
love
an
that they went
artist.
to Boeing.
I mean, it's the Pacific Northwest. Where else are you going to go? You know, Starbucks, I guess, right?
Yeah, basically.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I want to
True.
see.
I'd love to see.
I want to see what this struggle went, you know, and how this affected Cliff as the artist. And he said
Right,
himself,
it could
you know,
help him a ton.
He's doing some really interesting things now. You know, he's gonna play. He's gonna play in France. He's gonna play these songs in France. And I want to see what Pontier is like unmasked and without the freeloaders that were in his band.
I do love the third scene when they introduce Janet. She's the barista, and they're pouring in some just the blackest, most oily coffee beans you could think of.
Oh, 100%.
And it's just so greasy. And I'm a coffee guy. And I'm just like, oh, dude, that is so like Seattle during that time. Just like this darkest shit bean that probably tastes really crappy, but everybody does it because that's
You
what
have
do
to.
in Seattle.
That's what you do in Seattle, and that's what you do around Grunge Bible. There's a movie that has some of these characters in there. You watch them, and if you're lucky enough or unlucky enough to have a podcast, you make a podcast episode about
You
it.
talk about it. So that is our unbiased review of the Singles movie. Thank you, Cameron Crowe, for writing and producing that. Overall, like I said, I give it a 69. I think that it holds up for its place in, you know, movies, but you know, it's kind of you know, just fun. It's a fun movie.
I saw it. I don't need to see it again for a little while, but it's important that we saw it.
Absolutely. So, Chris, let's talk about songs of the week. I think we have to pick one from the soundtrack, or do you have another idea?
Yeah, I think you're right. I was toying with that idea earlier, and I'm not surprised to find out that you were also thinking the same way. I think I know what your song of the week is going to be.
I don't want it to be overkill, but I'm gonna go with Dyslexic Heart.
I knew it was going to be Dyslexic Heart.
It has to be. I've been like, let's do it. I just freaking love it. Like it's just it's just fun. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that on our songs of the week.
That's pretty good. My selection is going to be Breath, also from the single soundtrack, the Pearl Jam song. That was one of the earlier moments where I was finding myself getting excited about the movie while I was watching it, because I was like, fuck yeah, like they're playing this in the car, like this is great. Breath and a Scream, Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
You know, Seattle Sound, Pearl Jam, grunge rock. So
yeah,
that's what we're gonna go
can't
with.
beat it.
Yeah. So this was overdue. My apologies to anybody that has been hoping for this episode for a long time, but that just goes to show you sometimes there are things that you need to wait for. I'm not going to say that it was worth the wait. That's for you to decide and let us know. And as always, if you have any other suggestions of various films or albums or artists that you want us to talk about, we'll get to them eventually because we're going to be here a while.
Absolutely. All right. So yeah, if you are still listening, thank you again for making it to the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. One way that you can support us not only is Patreon, but please leave a review, positive or negative. We don't care. But the more reviews we get, just the more, I guess, validated we are, because if we have a ton of reviews and we have a 4.5 stars, it's legit, so just help us to continue to grow that. So one, we can make our podcast better if you can leave, a written review, but also just because, the numbers don't lie. So the more reviews, the better.
Absolutely. And in the same way that everybody who listens to this show supports us with their time or with their money or with their positive words or with their encouragement or suggestions, we do like to support, different people that are important to us. And as we began last week, we did talk about a little bit at the end of last week's episode, the Social Act Band, and we're back with a little more music from the Social Act Band to end this podcast episode. As we mentioned last week, they've got a lot of new music coming down the pipe, and Ellis and John in particular are two of the nicest guys that we've had the opportunity to meet. Ethan, you've been able to meet both of them in person. You visited
Absolutely.
Chicago last year in November, I believe, or December. But yeah, John Krenger and Ellis Clark, really, really great guys. They make music for the purest of reasons. They're enthusiasts, and the love that they have for their music and for one another too is really inspiring. So I'm excited to share a little bit more of their music here at the end of another Grunge Bible podcast episode.
Absolutely. Yeah, these guys are, again, like we said, they're putting a lot of hard work into their music. It comes from the heart. They're doing it because they love it. They've been doing it a long time, since the 80s. And, it's not hard to be pursuing an endeavor for so long. And the fact that they're still doing it now at an older age.
Oh, yeah. It's
don't
easy
get mad
to
at
do.
me, John. But these guys, it really is. They're playing because they love it, and they're putting everything they have into it. And that you have to respect it, and you have to love it and love to see it. So this album is coming out when I was there in Chicago. Logan was with me, and they sampled some of the new stuff, and it's
Killer.
pretty. I think it's their best stuff, Chris. I'm not even just saying that. Some really good. The recordings are really clean, really beautiful. Mm-hmm. Definitely worth listening with headphones. That's what John says every time he sends us stuff, and it makes sense because they put a lot of work, and you want to hear it the best quality. So listening with headphones is great. And he talked about the writing process a few times and how they would go out to different sceneries and different areas in the U.S. and get inspiration and obviously a lot of inspiration from their whole life. And they have some great stuff coming. I'm pretty excited. Some big, just like when they're jamming, when they're just playing, they're at their best, and they go into some really good jams on this next album. So I'm looking forward to it for sure. It's taking a lot, they're taking their time. Come on, John, I'm ready for it. You know what I mean?
I know,
But
give it to us.
give it to us already. Denied the crowd hose water for long enough.
For too long. Yeah, we're dehydrated. We're warm. We're hot. We need some water.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So as we did last week, we will end this podcast episode with a little bit more from the Social Act.